and I'll show you that as well. And then we'll annotate it. So let's start with that much. And so I'm in the BR design file, and I've got referenced in my geometry from the BK file, and I have referenced in my survey from the field book file. And in the Open Roads modeling workflow, the geometry tools, I'm going to use the geometry point command. So this command is going to allow me to choose a feature definition for what I'm going to be placing. And under points, there's just a category for control and monument points. So that's where you're going to find those various control points and monument points. So I'm going to use the proposed iron pin with ID cap. So that cell's floating on my cursor, and it does default to a default point name for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the defaults. So what I'm going to do is use Civil Accudraw to put this in. And again, this is just a simple example, but I'm just taking stuff off of a plan that was already done by District 5. So I'll use Civil Accudraw and just turn on the dialog, and we're going to use the station and offset mode. So in station offset mode, if you remember, we tab to the offset field, and then the letter O allows us to pick our origin for our centerline element. So I'll just pick my centerline as my reference for my stations and offsets. Now the symbol itself, I can put it in an absolute value, or I can put it in relative to an alignment as far as defining the rotation. If you use the relative to alignment option, it will ask you at some point, it should ask me to identify that alignment. So even though Civil Accudraw has the alignment, it's a separate function. It's not related to Civil Accudraw. So it should ask me for that at some point. I thought it would have right there. Anyway, so I'm going to put in, this is station 1021 plus 65, and we are 30 feet to the left. And one of the things I always like to check in Civil Accudraw is look at the options here. And I don't like the floating origin or the context sensitivity. You know, you may decide you like the context sensitivity, but the floating origin, I definitely don't want to use the floating origin. I want my origin to stay relative to that center line. The floating origin is useful if I were doing something like laying out a traverse where the new point becomes the origin for the next point that I'm putting in. So I don't want that to float, so I'll turn that off. So I'm going to put this in at station 1021 plus 65 minus 30. It's locked in on that location, so I'll accept that. And it's not liking something here. Let me start that over. So let's start the point command again. Okay, there's what I expected. So I think it was looking for the reference element, and the prompt may have been obscured by Civil Accudraw. So this again is for that rotation of that relative to the alignment. So I'll pick that element, so that's going to define my rotation of my cell relative to the alignment, and I'm going to tell it I want a 90-degree rotation here. It's in bearings, so that's north 90 east. Is that right? 90, yeah, okay. So it'd be north 0 east, yeah, in a clockwise direction. Anyway, so we'll put this in at 1021 plus 65 and 30 feet to the left. Then it's asking me to accept that rotation, so I do need to click to accept that rotation. There we go. All right, so the next one's 1021 plus 95. And this one's at 65 feet to the left. Go ahead and put that in, and I have two more to put in. One at 1023 plus 28.05, and it's 70 feet to the left. And the last one, I ignore that right-of-way line. I think I put that in incorrectly, so it should have fell on the line, but I think I had a mistake on that. And the last one is down here at this corner, so I'm just going to snap to that corner and put it in and accept its rotation. So using Civil Accudraw, those are all ruled. If I select that point, I can see its station and its offset rule. So if I need to make changes to that, I can just change that rule. So I'm going to take this and make a closed area from this. So I'm going to use in my geometry tools the line between points command. And for this on my feature, I'm going to use a parcel area feature. So that's a category of just some. Now I'm not muted, okay. So the parcel areas are just the simple areas that you might have a proposed easement area, proposed taking area, or existing easement occupied, or the parent tract. So this is a taking area, so I'll use that feature definition. And it does give me a default name, and for the individual lines, I'm not going to worry too much about the name, but when I make this a complex area, I will definitely type in the name I want for that parcel or that taking area. Now when I snap to these points, I'm going to use the origin snap. So I'll double click on my origin snap, and that way it will associate those points with the line. I believe you have to use the origin snap in order for the points to be associated. So I'm going to just start with this one and go to that one and just continue on around and connect these up. And the last, go back on this one. I really didn't need civil Accudraw when I was doing that. It wasn't doing anything. So I'm going to take this and make a complex element out of that. So I'll do the geometry complex by element. And again, I want to make sure I'm using my feature definition for the parcel area. And now I'm going to define that, and taking the name off the old plan, that was a 4-SH was the name. So you can use manual mode or automatic mode. I'm just going to manually click on these and go around it in the direction. And it looks like I missed one. Sorry. Let me put that line back in. All right, now let's close that out. And that was 4-SH. Okay, so when it's closed, the feature definition is configured for these areas to be shaded. So the taking area is just shaded in a red. Now, on this computer, we're running the 2020 Release 1 version of the software. In 2019 versions, that fill wasn't working. So if you're going to put in these parcel areas in the older version, you won't see them shade like this. So when we initially did this, I talked to Ray Foos here in central office, and I had initially thought that would just be a good tool for the user to easily see that bounding area. But Ray said that at least in District 3, when they were doing some right-of-way plans, talking with the public, they would shade those taking areas. So I had initially set those as construction elements, so in theory they wouldn't plot, but in talking with Ray, we did not make those construction elements. So it's intended to be used as the underlying element, not anything that would be shown on the plan, so that level will be turned off if you don't want that shading. What we are going to show on the plan is the taking area, and that's a standard highway easement line. So the next thing I would do is go back to my line between points command for this one, and instead of a parcel area, I'll go to right-of-way. And under easements, this will be a proposed standard highway easement. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the iron pins as what I'm snapping to put these lines in. So those are the lines that I would be showing in my plan work, and I would be turning off the level of that underlying parcel area. Now, since all this has been snapped to those points, if I come in and edit one of these points, maybe change this offset to -70, everything is going to move together since it's all associated with that point. Okay, now I can do a line style shift on this line style with the SH is running off. Don't remember where that command is, so if I use the search ribbon, I can do the modify. line style attributes. So that looks like it's under Open Roads Modeling, wherever. So the modify line style attributes command can be used to shift that if I need to slide that a little bit. The only thing to keep in mind on that is if I would make an edit, so let's go back and change this to -65. It has to redraw that line. So it's going to restart that line style cycle from its original location when it redrew the line. So just keep that in mind if you make those edits, that you would lose that shift and you would have to reapply that. Okay, so I want to take a look at a couple of these graphics. So if I select this line and look at its properties, find the geometry points and expand that. So I can see over here the points that it's been snapped to are stored as part of the definition of that line. So that's what we're looking for by placing those points first and snapping to that. So any reports I do out of the geometry are going to include those point names as part of that geometry report. So just on this particular element, I look at just the generic report for a horizontal line, and the reports will see those point names as well. So those are listed there. Now the area itself, if I select that and generate a report from it, it's going to also include the point names as part of that report. Now I mentioned I'm in the 2020 Release 1 version, and there are some new reports that were added in here. So if I go, instead of civil geometry, down to legal descriptions, and let's see what we've got here. So a couple of these legal descriptions are new, so I don't know off the top of my head exactly which ones, but we had a couple of requests, and let's see if I can find one of them here. Okay, so here's one. We had a couple of requests for things like in the legal description to spell out the word north and to spell out the degrees, minutes, and seconds. So that's something that Bentley has incorporated in this release and added some new reports that have some different formats. So I know we've shown these reports to the surveyors in the past, and that was a comment that they had, is, you know, some of the regions want everything spelled out. So that's been added. So there's some different reports there. And as I've said to the surveyors in the past, if there's some specific reports that we need to configure for ODOT use that are not supported by what Bentley delivers, then you guys just need to let us know, and we'll see what we can do to dig into this to possibly customize some reports. So I'm going to leave it at that on the legal description based off the area itself. The next thing I wanted to do is annotate this area. So if I go to Drawing Production, in the element annotation, I could annotate a single individual line just by clicking on that element, and I'll get its bearing and distance. Got a question?
Yeah. Is there a way to change the settings of the format from decimal degree to degrees, minutes, seconds inside the report?
Oh, yeah.
You want to show that?
Yeah, I'll go back to the report and I'll show that. Let me go ahead and remove that annotation on the individual line, and instead I'm going to annotate the taking area itself. So when I annotate the taking area, it's going to annotate all the boundaries as well as the name of that area in a circle. So right now we have the field backgrounds turned on, so that's why those backgrounds are there. That's a user preference for those fields. So that's the annotation that you can get out of just the area itself by annotating it. Of course, those are just pieces of text that you can move where you want. So let's go back to the report. So if I click on the report, go to the horizontal geometry report. So I think Kyle has everyone muted here, so I'm not sure if you're looking at which report you wanted to see that in. But under Tools, there's a Format Options. And format options are something that are user-specific and machine-specific. I've talked to Bentley about these, the need to have these stored, or at least the need for us to be able to set some defaults that are shared with the users. But these are actually written to the registry, And when you make changes, those changes are written to the registry by the user. So right now it's a very odd implementation. But I can change my output format here if I want, whatever I want here. Degrees, minutes, and seconds, no decimal points on that. Stations to 2 places with a plus sign. Directions and bearings, again, no decimal places, degrees, minutes, and seconds. So these are dynamic. So as soon as I close that, these changes are applied to the report as it's active. So that's going to carry through to the legal description report that I had open earlier for degrees, minutes, and seconds. And not sure which is controlling that. Need to change that. Oops. It's probably linear. It's probably that one. Yes. Now I don't have any idea how if that impacts this. I suppose that would impact these annotations here. So does that answer the question? Yeah. So it's just a notice point. Unfortunately, every user's got to set those for themselves, and sometimes it saves what you last had said. I don't know, but we have some requests in for a little better implementation on that format.
And to be clear, that is only affecting the report. Those kind of stuff is not affecting your actual EGN file.
Yeah.
I've seen that question come up too.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. Next thing I wanted to look at was, right now the points are just graphic elements in MicroStation. There's no real way to manage the list of points and give me a dialogue where I can see all the points, and then those types of things are we'll just have to see what Bentley adds in the future. But I know that station and offset of these points is something that's needed and then wanted maybe for stakeout type work or things like that. So if I go to the Home tab, there's a different group of reports here on the Home tab. There's a couple ones that are specific to right-of-way and parcels. So there's a legal report, a map check report here. I think the legal report's basically what I just did, only it just takes me directly to that report where I had to browse and select a different report in the report browser. Map check's going to give me the closing area and errors if it doesn't close and that type of stuff. Obviously, this was put in by snapping, so everything's going to close in that, but there's the default map check report, and it's going to give you that closing information down there. So the other one I wanted to point out was the point feature station offset elevation report. So the way this one works is it's looking for a baseline element, so I'll pick my alignment, and then I'm just picking the elements that I want it to report. So I'll pick my 4 iron pins, and then right-click when I'm done. So there's the default report for this. And since it's not a survey point that I'm using, it is a geometry point, so it's showing the full path. One of the things we asked for was a report without the full path, and I know they added that, and again, I just need to poke around and see which one that is. So there's a report here that will just list just the feature name itself, which is that part without the full path to it. So I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but I know I saw that. So that's something that as we move towards this 2020 release 1, and as we move towards implementing that in ODOT, we'll have to update some documentation to show those types of things. So rather than me poke around to find that, I'm just going to close that out. So what I want to do is jump back over and just kind of make sure I've covered the things I want to cover here. Okay, so parcel labels is the next thing we need to talk about. So I'm in a base map at this point, and you could do some labeling in the base map if you want to do that. That's not necessarily, like I annotated this parcel in the base map. You could also do labeling once you make a sheet and do that in the drawing model of that sheet. And I did not make any sheets, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a label in here. So if I go back to the drawing production tab, there's this place label command. I know we showed this command in the road training, so I'll just show a couple things here. There's an option with a leader line or without a leader line, and you can place labels based off of a cell or a text favorite. I'm just going to use a cell, and we have some cells that we've already configured with label parameters in them. So the parameters are just reading the civil data to get their values and then populating those values. So I know in the training we showed the, just like the station offset report, we used the mouse wheel instead of that. So I'm going to look for a plan, station, full, and I will put a leader line on there, or I could use the leader line with a line terminator or an arrowhead. So I'll just use the one without the arrowhead. Rotation of this can be horizontal oriented, vertically oriented, or in line with my leader line. And I can place the label starting at the terminator or starting at the placement of the label position. And then whether it's aligned to the left or right or automatically set, you can select that there. And then this is just telling it to follow annotation scale and to be associated with the element, and then that, I believe that will allow the whole thing to move in relation to the element, not just the pointer or the leader line. So if I'm going to place this, it does need to know the alignment. So down in the lower left, at the prompts that we never read, it says identify element or data point. So I'll pick my element so it knows we're related to that element, and I'll just start by this iron pin set, and let's change it to station and offset instead of just station. And I'll just place that where I want it, and there's my label. So I can just continue on and annotate the rest of these. So just to test the associations, I'm going to change that offset again on this iron pin and change that to -70. And you can see the label moved with that and the offset value updated as well. So that's just a really quick run through of the labels. In that labeling tool, we've made some labels as a starting point, and as you guys dig into this more, if we need to add additional labels, probably the best process is just to use the CAD support request form and send that in, and then JD or I or Kyle or someone can make a label. Right now the labels work best as cells. They don't work as well at picking just a text favorite. So JD gave a plug for CAD meeting tomorrow. I know he's got quite a few things to talk about with regards to labels in relation to the drainage and utility software. So I know he's going to be doing quite a bit of stuff with labels with that. I'll be doing a little bit later in the afternoon when we talk about plan and profile sheets, but not anything in any great depth. So as far as labels are concerned, that's really all I intended to do today, was just review that with you guys. I know you saw that in the road training. So the information that's in this handout, it's got some labels that are unique to, like there's a begin right-of-way acquisition label, so that's unique to right-of-way. So there's some different ones that I just pulled off of a sample plan with begin and ending right-of-way acquisition and that type of thing, begin project, end project. So you'll see those type of labels are configured currently. Now there's a geometry builder tool that we did not show in the road training. I know Colton did cover that in the survey training. And this tool is primarily intended to be used for parcels. It could be used for an alignment, but that was not its intended use. So it's allowing me to put in bearings and distances. I can put in curves and spirals in it as well. And then once those bearings and distances are entered, I could place that in the file as a parcel element. So this is documented here with an example. Maybe it's not. I'm just saying see the Bentley Online thing. So I don't remember what I did. Yeah, I did do some documentation here for this. So I'm adding new geometry and then giving that a name. I'm also picking the feature definition up here at the top for this. So it is going to honor the feature definition. So putting in the bearing and distances, and it will give me the closure here. And I think I may have intentionally made this one just a little bit off so it didn't close perfectly. So that's going to show that parcel as it's built, and it'll float on your cursor, and then you can just place it where you want in the file. So it's a nice tool for taking deed descriptions from, or the parent tract or whatever you've got, and getting those initial existing parcels in there. The one thing it does not do in this release is there's been requests to be able to associate point names with these corners. So I know that's a request that's been submitted to Bentley, and hopefully something we'll see in a future update to this tool. So that way it could put in some points at those corners, and then those points would be associated and included in any descriptions. So that's something to keep in mind with this, is there's no point names associated with those corners. And since the point names, the points, you're snapping to the points that are already there, so you can't really add them to a line after the fact. Okay. In the geometry builder, you can export and save that as an XML file, so that's covered as well. So the next thing that I'm suggesting is, once you've got this finalized, if you select that underlying geometry element and go to its rules, one of the rules is to lock the element by deactivating its rules. So if I deactivate the rules, that now I can't delete that. If I try a microstation delete, it's not going to let me delete that. I can't make any modifications to it unless I reactivate the rules, which would then unlock the element for editing. Same thing is true with these points. If I want to, I can go into those points. No, I can't. Can I lock a rule on a point? I thought I could. I'm going to have to look into that. That'd be nice to be able. Kyle says he doesn't know
I think that. On the lines and the shapes.
Yeah, lines and shapes. So I got myself in trouble by venturing down a path I'd never gone before. It's not the first time I've done that. Probably not the last. But I would suggest locking at least the parent tract areas in place, and by deactivating the rules once you have those. I'm sorry, taking areas, any parcel areas, once you have them defined. The other thing I can do, since this is a closed geometry element, in the geometry tools under import export, I can export that geometry as an XML file. So I'm going to click on that element and accept my XML version, and I'm not going to do project-wise here. I'm not really in project-wise. It thinks I am, but so I have this all locally on this laptop. So I'm just going to put it under right-of-way engineering data, and it's named by the name of the parent of the area itself. So I can just save that XML file. So that just has the commands to regenerate this if I ever needed to re-import that for some reason, if it got deleted somehow or whatever. So I've got that XML file as a backup. So I definitely would suggest doing that with your areas, your parcel areas, and just like with your geometry, I would suggest doing that. So there's the exporting it to XML geometry. So we went through the reports. I think I showed you all the reports that I wanted to mention. There's those three reports that I mentioned. And I didn't actually run the legal report. It's got a few steps on that that you can go through to get that parcel layout report. So I'll refer you to that if you need to run the report. And we did the point feature station offset, and then there's the report formats. The last thing that's in this document is displaying a right-of-way on cross sections. So the process for this is we have configured in the standards all the different available easement lines and right-of-way lines. So you can see that was my testing file where I tested to make sure that they all worked. So the way this has to work is, in order for it to know vertically where to put that line, the right-of-way line has to have a profile elevation defined. So what I've done in this example when I was testing this was each of those right-of-way lines, I just draped them on my ground line. So they have now a profile that matches the existing ground. And that way when the cross sections are generated, it just knows to put that label. As long as it finds a right-of-way line that has a profile defined, it'll put it in there. So I'm not going to actually run that. So here's just with my terrain set as the active terrain and the right-of-way line itself, I can just use the command to set the ground as an active profile by draping it on there. actually I don't even have to do that in this example. All I did was just open a profile window and set it as active in this example. So I didn't even run the command to project it. So once that profile existing ground is set as active, you'll have a 3D element for the right-of-way. And that's what it's looking for actually, is that 3D element out of the 3D model, and it will show those on the cross sections. So that should be working for you guys. As always, if you run into problems and don't get the right-of-way to show up, just let us know and we'll help you work through that. Okay, now there's another one, and I don't, unfortunately in this work set, I did not run a corridor, so I don't have any construction lines, but construction limits, this is assuming that you're doing some corridor modeling, and then you've got, from the corridor modeling process, a tie line where my back slopes or foreslopes, wherever, are tying in with the existing ground. So that'd be the outer portion of my work. So there's a tie line run through the cross-section process that's going to draw using this DT proposed grade tie line feature definition. And what that gives you is this external line where it ties into the ground. So if your construction limits are offset from that, what you can do is select that element and use a single offset the entire element. So this is a geometry command where I'm making an offset from it, and whatever my construction limit offset is the starting point. So it's going to place that in, and I'm using the construction limit feature definition. So I've got this second element, in this example, 2 feet off. So that, at this stage, is a ruled element that's ruled to that graphic. If I want to make edits to it, all I need to do is remove the rules from that. So once I have that offset line, I can remove those rules, and then I can do any edits I need to change those construction limits. So that's a way to get construction limits from a corridor modeling process if you're doing modeling on a project. And I think that may be the last thing in this document. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, in ProjectWise, there's also one for survey. I'm not going to go through that, but if you want to take a look at that, there's a few things in there related to Geometry Builder. A couple different examples of Geometry Builder. There's also an example in there using a translation and rotation to rotate a parcel to meet some survey points that were picked up in the field, and to hold, I think we're holding one of those points as a fixed point that we want it to, and then the others are going to be adjusted relative to that. So there's some examples there that are a little more survey-centric than they are plant production-oriented. Is there a question there? No? Okay, so the other thing, I think this is the last thing we want to cover today. In this 2019 Release 1, actually I think I'm sorry, 2020 Release 1. This may have been added in, okay, so where's the site modeling? Did they change that to reality modeling? That's got to be something different. Why am I not seeing the site modeling tools?
I don't know. Was it a tech preview?
No, it should be there. Do 2020.
Sweet.
I didn't want to do that. Okay, so one click off. I just exited when I wanted to hit help. Let's go back here. Yeah, we're 2020 Release 1. Okay, so I didn't see it on the menu. We need to look at the configuration on this laptop to see why I didn't look at that before I jumped on your laptop. But there's some site tools that were added, I think, in 2019 Release 2, but there's also a parcel tool that's part of the site tools. So that's a different tool entirely from what I've been showing, which is just geometry-based, closed areas with geometry. So what we wanted to do is, from a Bentley agency call, they showed us this tool and gave us a demo of this tool. And at this point, the tool is considered a technology preview in the 2020 Release 1. What that means is they're looking for users to test this and give them feedback on the operation of the tool before it's considered kind of a finalized tool. So I have not spent any time looking into the tool myself. Let me double check this again. Yeah, I should see site modeling there. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Maybe you didn't install that piece. Is it a separate
I don't know, it could be.
checkbox on the install? It could be. So I think what JD's got in the PowerPoint, if you want to take that over,
Yeah.
JD, go ahead.
So what we wanted to show was the demo that Bentley gave on these the open site parcel tools, so you guys can kind of see how they work. And so again, it's tech preview, so they're looking for feedback. So maybe if you guys see this and you want to take a look at it and offer some feedback, we could help shape the way the tool works, and we could possibly use that as the way we do parcels. So I am just going to play the video, and you guys can watch. So
I'm going to show
make sure we. Let me turn my volume up here. Hold on.
Whatever I'm showing you for open site is in open roads or open
So
rails.
hopefully you guys can hear that. Let me take this into full screen.
So I'm going to show the new parceling features that we're adding to open site. But the one thing to remember, whatever I'm showing you for open site is in open roads or open rails. So if you got the newer versions, you're probably noticing a little site tab. You may have played around with it, you may have not.
Hold on, guys. Let me. This is supposed to play in full screen.
Right.
There you go.
So I'm going to show the new parceling features that we're adding to open site. But the one thing to remember, whatever I'm showing you for open site is in open roads or open rails. So if you got the newer versions, you're probably noticing a little site tab. You may have played around with it, you may have not. For most people, if they're doing road work, this typically doesn't have a lot of things you may want. Hopefully, maybe I'll show a few things today that you will. So I'm going to go through two different ways of doing parceling. One is by parsing area and one is by block. So if we go in by area, this would be, for most people, as you would think, like a traditional subdivision.
It's a tab.
So we want to identify an area. We'll bring this in, and I'm just going to draw an area. We'll keep this simple for today.
I was looking in the wrong place.
Just go in and draw an area. Now, if you've seen some of the tools that we've done with open site, like parking, driveways, a lot of that stuff, once you go in and create the area, things like a parking lot would automatically generate. Inside of the parceling tools, it doesn't quite work that way because a parcel, to some level, needs some ingress, egress. There are some tools that we have that are coming that will allow you to do it like along the outer edge, not necessarily have to tie it to a roadway. They'll be out. Actually, this will be coming out as a tech preview in the next release in December, all this parceling stuff that I'm adding. So we come in, the only thing we need to do now is just draw a driveway. So we'll just come in, create a quick little drive. You want to see that the site will automatically. Give it just a second. We have broken for today. That would be nice. One second. This was working just a few minutes ago. Let's get rid of this and try it again. Do 1/3 road through just to make it simple for today. Road. Here we go. We'll just keep it simple for right now. So again, it creates lots based on the lot requirements that you have. You can make the roads any shape, form, configuration. We can come in and add knuckles. We can add, if I want to go over to the corner, this area, change the radius, click on the roadway, just make it catch up. Broke a little bit of testing this morning, so we'll add a knuckle to this. Add a quick knuckle, true. Then how big is it? What's the offset? Again, this back to the user to control what do we want to do with this. I just want to come in and put a 50-foot offset. You come in and start getting creative. Sooner or later, an offset becomes a cul-de-sac as we go through with it long enough. Then we can come in and add cul-de-sacs. Simple little process. Understand that I'm not in the middle of a road. Since I'm not in the middle of the road, I'm probably not going to put a knuckle. I am going to generate go down so you can see it a little better. We're going to pick on that point, and we're going to tell it to turn on a cul-de-sac. Quickly put in a cul-de-sac. Now, it will grade. We do have full capabilities of grading, and we'll talk a little bit just for a second here on all the controls. There's a lot of controls that come along with parceling. Something simple as I want to change the parcel size. It will automatically revise that. I can have multiple areas touching each other, configuring, making things work a different way. We're going to do a lot. If it's a building, it's placed on here as we do in this drawing. Grade, it will pad grade. If you don't have it, it won't pad grade. Come in, and again, I just want to show this real quick. I'm hitting the grading button because this is a key feature, and if you don't do it, somebody here comes to mind. But I really want to show you what's other part of parceling, which is parceling block. This more falls into right-of-ways, right-of-way takes, things of this nature, parcels, being able to label the parcel. And again, I can label every one of these parcels, parcel tables, label tables, curve tables, and I'm going to just basically get rid of this, and we're going to go through that, which I have feelings a little more enticing to this group. So let's just get rid of this. A parcel block is nothing more than a parcel area, and I want to break it up. So if you think about, we're doing right-of-way takes, and we get a bunch of shape files. I can bring those in, turn those into parcels, and as we start acquiring property because of the right-of-way, or we're adding to something, we're moving it, and as we're constantly changing the road design, you can change that right-of-way line or easement line or whatever you want to call it as breaking the parcel, and it will give you separate parcels. So to do this, we just draw a block area. You can use this to grade as well. I don't see a few DOTs I've talked to have not really looked at the idea of using this as a grading tool. If we come in, we'll just draw a couple parcels. Again, through shape files, I could just merely say pick on shape, and it will create from a shape file. So we'll just add a couple parcels here. So if we look at it, the parcel is there. If I want to turn on some labeling for the parcel, we'll just go and turn this one on here for right now, just for a second. So if you want to add labels to parcels, it's a little different than the way you typically do label with text favorites and annotation groups and things like that. We want to keep it a little easier, but we also want to have the dynamic flow of things constantly changing. So we have a dynamic annotation group in here. So in this case, I could say, I want to use the master units, and I want to come in and we'll just do, now again, you can set the style, you can set whatever you want to. I just sort of went with what I have defaulted in my system, but you can see we do have the meets and bounds, and at this point, if I want to move it and change it, I can. If I revise this property, for example, it will put it back into place. So it is dynamic, but it will reset itself. And how do we deal with it? Again, a lot of the basic information, such as what is my precision? Do I want it distance above, direction below, or vice versa? We've got full control. We can do it by line or by the whole area. Do line and curve tables. What are the prefixes? You can change this. You can have multiple line tables, multiple curve tables, maybe based off each parcel being separate. A dot size basically is, that's what the developer said. We're working on this. Basically, if I want to come in and look at, basically, if we have a monument in the corner, we can put that in. But where a lot of the power starts to happen is, how do we cut this property up? So if we had a right-of-way coming through, we're doing a take. If I want to start creating these parcels into sub-parcels, multiple pieces, there's a thing in here called parcel divider. And this is nothing more than a line that I can trace across the top of a right-of-way. You want to pick the parcel you want to affect, and then you want to draw the line. You don't even have to be exact. It will extend it all the way across. So you can make any parcel. And let's see, we'll do, let's come up like this. I got to pick the right parcel. So you can make this any shape, form. You'll start labeling. Again, we're doing some more advanced work on some of the labeling. But if I zoom in and I pick on this, I can, of course, change this, and it will automatically relabel, rechange everything. The other neat thing is also, let's bring this down. You have two things that are on the exact same line. We do not have to worry about duplicate. So, for example, right now, I've not told it to label this one So it's only worrying about the label on that one side from this point to that point. But if I tell the other one, let's just say I just want merely, we want the distance. We don't want to go with it. But if you notice, it now automatically chops that other line up into multiple lines, so that if we move things, as we move it, again, we are on the exact same line, we'll chop it up accordingly. And if we miss it, we see there, if I pull this back, you'll see that since it's not exactly touching, it will not take that into account. We can come in and do some, just want to throw something up here real quick just so we can have a couple curves on this. So if you want to add tables, this is pretty simple. Go over to the side. So under drawing production, we have added the ability. Now, I manually turned on the annotations just a minute ago. I can also tell it over here under site annotation. I can pick on the area and say turn on annotations. Update it. If I changed it and it didn't update for some reason, remove it if I want to take it off. But the parcel tables, line tables, curve tables. So I want to do a parcel table. Up here in the top, I can come in and give it things like textiles. Do I want to change the orientation? It's going to create a spreadsheet so I can have that externally. I'm going to go ahead and do those two. So when I create it, zoom in here. I want to make sure that it is the table the way that I want it to be. At this point, I can also come in, just like any typical spreadsheet, I want to come in and I want to have that centered and change it. You can chop and cut these tables up into multiple pieces, and as the parcels change, so if we got five lots right now. Let's just go back in and revise this. If I go back in and say, let's go to site, we'll chop this up one more time. Here we go. I'm going to take this parcel and we're going to chop it up again. As we chop it up, and you'll see it actually adds a little. And if the line is short enough, it can't fit the bearing and distance or however, whatever I'm trying to label. Like you see the L2 and L1, it adds the label automatically. We go back over to the side, we now have lots 5. So as we add and take away parcels, lots, lines, these tables will automatically be produced for us. So we don't have to do anything. So again, line tables similar to the parcel. What is the prefix I want to start with? Then I want to come in and basically just set that line of information. Go forward. So again, so I just want to give you a quick update, little idea of what we're doing parcels. This will be a tech preview coming out in December. So one of the biggest things we want a lot of feedback as we're putting this out right now, just so we can make sure we're covering all the bases. Just gave you a quick couple-minute glimpse into what's coming. But that's what I wanted to show today was just an idea that we have parceling. Again, if you hear it, it's just not for residential. It's for pretty much anybody dealing with some form of parceling.
Thank you, David. Very, very interesting.
So show them where that is in the site and stuff. It's just a tab. I was looking for a workflow.
Oh, there's supposed to be a workflow. This says open site modeling. Yeah, it's missing. So,
okay.
Maybe I just missed on the install. Since it's a tech preview, maybe I had to check it on during the install.
Yeah, I don't remember what I did on my laptop. I may have told it to install tech previews.
I thought I did, but so anyways, that is kind of a quick demo of a tech preview they added into 2020 Release 1. So if anyone is interested in taking a look at that or providing feedback, let us know. But let's open it up for questions, or if anyone has anything.
So Justin, I know we talked to Bentley at the conference about the need for them to support points in Geometry Builder, and I believe they said that was one of the things they had planned, but I haven't seen anything from them that indicates, at what release they would be implementing that. And I don't think we specifically have an ODOT request for that, so maybe that's something we need to make sure we've got as an ODOT request, so that we're logged as being interested in that. So yeah, we've talked to them about it, and I'm thinking their intent was to add that, but it's not there currently.
Like the same thing with the parcel tools as well, is adding more point-centric stuff on the open site side as well.
Yeah, that open site parcel tools that were in the Bentley demo there, we haven't looked at that at all, and I don't know how much control you have at this stage over the symbology of the lines that are placed. So that's where we're hoping that, you know, maybe some of you guys, a couple of you guys want to dig into that a little bit and look at it. And, you know, we can set you up to take a look at that in the 2020 release one. It would have to be on a, well, we can work out those details.
All right, well, it doesn't look like anyone else has a question. So as always, if you guys have feedback or questions about anything, feel free to email us, submit a support request for it. I think earlier in the chat window, we gave the link to the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. The registration is in there as well, if you want to register. With that, we'll end the second CAD webinar meeting, so we'll see you next time.